So absolutely delighted to have Tara O'Donovan join me. Tara was on our webinar during the week, and obviously a few technical issues from my side. I must apologize, Tara. Sorry about that. So what we decided on that call and decided on the kind of debrief afterwards, that we jump on here and do a bit of a recording, get a proper sense of what your opinion is, I suppose, in terms of the current deployment, a little bit about yourself, advice that you might have for other SNAs that are a bit unsure, and really kind of almost reflecting on that really nice blog that you wrote for us 2 weeks ago now. And there was some really nice sentiments in there as well. And I think we'll touch on that and some of the stuff that's kind of come up. So great to have you for SNAs that are watching, and for potential teachers, a few principals, maybe some parents, who knows. My own name is James Nortridge. If you weren't on a webinar, I run Your Ability, and really our kind of main, I suppose, goal is breaking down the barriers around assistive technology. So how can we make assistive technology more accessible? And for the last 6 months, we've been running courses predominantly for SNAs, got about 700 on the course already. And then we've a lot of courses for parents and teachers as well. So that's kind of our background. And we just thought we would pull together a webinar for SNAs in terms of using video as a support. And it kind of blew up a little bit, I guess, in many ways. We had close to 2,700 that registered, about 2,200 tried to log on. And obviously my home Wi-Fi didn't really work out as well as we hoped. So Tara, I suppose to kick off, you might just give us a small introduction to yourself and like what brought you to be an SNA, and maybe, the type of school you're working in, and the experience that you had before the craziness we find ourselves in now.
Sure. So as James said, my name is Tara O'Donovan. I'm special needs assistant working in an inner city school. We are an all-boys school, very busy. I've been in the school now for, I think we're on 11 years. So I've been here quite a while. I kind of fell into becoming an SNA. I had been doing intellectual disability nursing in college, and I had time off, and my mum's school needed an SNA for 2 weeks for a child with a medical condition. So because I had experience with medical, with giving injections and things like that, I was there for 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into 6 months. Never looked back, really.
Here we are.
Here we are. So so that time, I suppose I wouldn't have known much about anything about SNA work, but because it was intellectual disability nursing, my focus would have always been on autism and in behaviour in general. So I suppose that when I went on to the next school, they were looking for an SNA for a child with autism, and it spiraled from there. And then my third school is where I have been for, as I say, 11 years. So James and I would have been in Belarus, as he reminded me the other day, 17 years ago, we first went over working with children with disabilities. James, I think you did 3 or 4 trips. I did 7.
Yeah, something like that. You did 7, that's right. You were one of the
7 altogether, yeah.
You were one of the
over a number of years. But so that was working with children and adults with disabilities, from everything from ADHD to severe and profound intellectual disabilities.
Absolute great experience. I mean, I think just to go slightly off track, but like one of those things that I think it was the first year we went, 2003 maybe, 2003, yeah. Something like that. Like, and honest to God, I have a picture of one of the first kids, one of the Pashas, that like it's funny, he's on my shoulders, but it's one of the pictures I literally have downstairs, and I always kind of reflect on that time in Belarus, and it was really good because it was a time before phones and internet. Well, not before internet, you know what I mean? Like it was
pretty before internet.
It was. You kind of go there and you can just like do your day's work at the orphanage, and you felt like you were doing something, but it was good fun and a bit of crack as well. And when I reflect back on it, whatever age you were, like 16 or 17 or something, thinking our parents like letting us head off to Belarus and nothing about it. I think we checked in maybe once every few days. We had like so many calls we could make.
Well, the first place we stayed was the military hotel across the road.
Military hotel, that's right.
The second largest military base in the country. So all the phone calls were recorded.
That's right.
And I remember, so you'd ring home, and then we only heard clicks and whatever, but they could hear Russian speaking on the other side. So my first call home, I had to ring my friend to speak in Irish to him, to tell him, ring my dad and tell him not to be messing on the phone.
Yeah, I
Sure,
can
know what,
imagine,
Dad,
right?
you know,
Well,
that come out with anything.
we've moved so
So,
far in terms of those number of years and where we find ourselves now in terms of tech, and especially I suppose what we
definitely.
do and what you're doing. But like to kind of bring it back to the topic at hand and what we're discussing for the last week or so, like give us your sort of take on the redeployment for SNAs, or what's been pushed out there by the department in the last 3 weeks.
Well, the 1st of April was when the major redeployment letter came out. A week previously, there was a circular came out, and they were telling schools, it was kind of vague. They said the schools had to decide who was essential and who was not essential for learning. It was very vague as far as any principal I've spoken to has been concerned. Everyone is essential. As an SNA myself, I have been, because I run our school social media and have been for years, that's all through the Board of Management. So I had been doing that anyway. I'd been contacting parents. We hadn't set up Google Classroom at the time yet in school, so I was still fielding questions regularly from parents. Then this circular came out on the 1st of April, and it said suddenly there was no talk about redeploying us for contact tracing, which is what they had initially said. Now it was just saying that all SNAs, regardless, are going to be redeployed. Minister McHugh came out that evening and said that we would be replacing nurses in care homes.
Yeah, that was a wild statement.
It's a 4-year degree. You know, with the best of intentions, we're not going to earn a 4-year degree in a matter of weeks. So I suppose I knew from the start that wasn't going to happen. Legally, you cannot stick untrained people in as nurse. One thing they were talking about then is to put us in as healthcare assistants. Now, I've worked as a healthcare assistant. I used to collect kids after school and take them on trips and do a lot of the things that they mentioned in the circular. I used to bring kids on respite outside of homes. One thing we were always told was we never went into the house because you had to protect the child's privacy. You had your own safety. So this is one of the things they mentioned in the circular, was that we would be doing in-home supports. And knowing my experience with the HSC, that can't happen. And also, a lot of our kids, they're not, you don't know in their home situation, do they have a home set up where a stranger can walk in and suddenly set up some kind of in-school support, which they have closed the schools for a reason, I think.
I mean, I think it was just wildly unplanned.
Thrown out.
Yeah. Let's come up with some idea. Obviously, there is and was redeployment of a number of public servants, but at the same time, this was never properly thought out, and I think that's probably what's brought us kind of full circle. So we've gone through a few iterations now of this most recent circular, and obviously
so today even Forsa, the trade union, from the very start said it's not suitable for SNAs to be working in the homes or anything like that out in the communities. It's not suitable in current situations, not suitable for our training. But one thing that they have been saying, and what is possible, is remote learning. So there's, twos and fro's about that. Not everyone is set up for remote learning. So at least if I think those of us who are comfortable with computers, we can see how this is definitely possible in certain situations. I think those of us working, definitely class teachers are some who are now using Google Classroom. That's great. A lot of them have been able to use it, but then sometimes as an SNA, the kids that we work with are not the kids that are going to happily sit at a computer. So that's where we have to have.
I think I just want to pick up on a quick point there. You made a really interesting kind of point. So around remote learning versus remote support. And so, if we were to roll back and talk about the actual role of the SNA, it's not necessarily for learning per se.
No, it's not.
And so I what I'm trying to get around is like, where do you see it actually landing? So is it more about check-ins? You want to see how the students that you either are working with or students that you're assigned to are getting on, and how can you help in terms of supporting their learning,
Well,
but not
yeah.
necessarily giving them learning to do. You know, I
Yes,
just think
yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
yeah. Well, I think one of well, definitely in regards, they were talking about FaceTiming, that kind of thing. That's definitely not, it's not, professionally, it's not suitable.
yeah,
But one of the things that I suppose us as SNAs, we have the kind of, we're used to thinking outside the box, as much as anyone who works with children with disabilities does. As much as possible, we're trying to see, you look at the mainstream classroom, and your kids are often somewhere outside the box of the mainstream, and you're trying to figure out what way they get in. So whether, like in terms of remote learning, if we know what is out there, we know how to find a pathway in.
for that
So
particular student.
for
Yeah,
it, yeah.
yeah,
So a lot of it, like if you know the kids you're working with, I mean, I know I was talking to one parent through the school media, and her child was not communicating at all with the class teacher. He has a fabulous relationship with the class teacher. Class teacher has been putting on great work, but it was just, his anxiety levels were just too great. So I started posting Lego challenges on, and suddenly he's engaging with that. So because in the past I have done work with him, I bring in the school iPad into him and show him how to take photographs. We do, we do the school work in a fun way.
yeah.
He takes a photograph of a worksheet, edits the photograph to put in, he thinks he's not working. And so I think that's one of
But
the
in
tricks
reality,
that,
yeah,
yeah,
I think that we'll come back around, because I really like that idea you talked about, the Lego challenge. Like one thing actually that came to mind there again when we talk about remote learning versus like check-ins and support. Just this morning I was reading a study from New Zealand that looked at the New Zealand earthquakes, and obviously the kids there missed like I think 7 or 9 weeks of school.
oh yeah,
And yeah, and so like obviously internet was down, there was no, teachers weren't necessarily pushing out work, and they looked at their test scores over that same period and the next year, and in actual fact their scores had slightly risen, and they put that down to the kids were more relaxed, they had learned through play, and that,
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, so
definitely.
they weren't being pushed to actually do, and I think that's more specific for primary school. I get it, and there's a different set of circumstances for some of our secondary school students, but nonetheless, I think it's about engaging. And I'm pretty sure you can probably hear my son in the background shouting there, but that's okay. He's just looking for his dinner. He's probably shouting for me. But anyway, I'll share that like New Zealand study. It really is interesting.
Yeah, be interesting.
Yeah.
But it's actually it's a really good point, because I don't know if you read, there was an article in the Irish Times there a few weeks ago by an Irish principal, and she, as a mother and a principal, was telling parents don't have to be superheroes, but like, we're not in, those who are working from home, like you're not homeschooling your child at home, it's remote learning at best.
Yeah.
If your child comes out of this remembering the fun times they had with their, with their siblings, their definitely, the various things that we're
Bit of
doing,
cooking, bit of baking, bit of
bit of baking.
play in the
I
back.
mean,
Yeah, they're the
my
things,
local,
again, younger kids obviously, but like
yeah,
that's a lovely
definitely,
point there, is like, obviously you don't need to be superheroes, and I think that's as applicable to teachers or SNAs as it is
yeah,
to parents, like,
definitely,
yeah,
yeah,
it's one of the key
definitely,
things.
because one of the big things there with, definitely in a lot of online forums where SNAs were talking about, oh, what am I going to do now? Because suddenly I'm told I have to do X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the day, we are also not superheroes.
Yeah,
We can't take on everything. Despite the confusion around the circulars, we don't have, full control over the education of all these children, which is kind of what it started looking like. But I think the trade union Forza came out today again, and they said, after talking to, sitting down with government ministers during the week, they've said, we're definitely not going to be working outside. And the hope is that it'll be with children that we already know. Like, we've built up these skills that we have from dealing with children. And we know
Yeah,
ourselves, the kids we work with, you need a level of understanding of the child. And there will be days when it is, if I was having a I don't know, a maths versus zombies challenge with a child, and that was the only learning that child did in terms of academics that day. I mean, that would be a huge
just to take something in.
challenge. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I think you know best, like as an SNA, as the person that works most with that child. I think you're right though. There's still a bit of clarity obviously to come, and hopefully that
yeah.
will come next week. So we're recording this at the back end of the week of the 13th or whatever it is. So really it's sort of like what's going to come out next week in the most
Yeah.
clarified circular. But I just looked there at the statement from Forza. So it's like SNAs will be asked to provide a remote service supporting those students already in receipt of HSE disability services. This means SNAs can work safely, and it safeguards the position of those who have caring responsibilities or underlying health conditions. So again, you know, you can kind of read between the lines. There's not an awful lot of clarity for the great
No,
part,
there
but
isn't.
I think what it does say is that it really is only going to be remote. Now, how that remote learning works or happens is another thing. But I think, you know, if you're an SNA that's, and lots of SNAs that have taken our course will often say to me, "Cheekers, James, I'm a technophobe. I don't know anything about technology." And that's okay. Like, don't worry about that. Like, once you're willing to kind of look into it in any way. And I said this on the webinar during the week, like it doesn't have to be video. It could just be audio. It could even be, you know, it could be some sort of communication via written, depending on what you're using, what your school's using. And I'll obviously go into a bit more detail on that in another video, but it's really about just bare minimum, and it's like baby steps, you know, like if it is only a daily check-in for 5 minutes, even with a parent via some safe, you know, thinking about privacy and GDPR and all that sort of stuff that complies with your own personal level of safety and security, but also with the school, which I think is most important in terms of school privacy. And I know we talked about a bit about that on the call, on the webinar, but like your take in terms of the school usage and privacy policies and that sort of thing.
Well, for my school, it is very clear that you don't use personal social media. I know our resource teachers, the SEN team and homeschool liaison and principal have been contacting, they've been ringing parents, so they've contacted all the parents at this stage.
Great.
But then, you know, even at that, they have blocked their phones because it's not appropriate for parents to have the teachers' home private numbers.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%.
And like, because even
and likewise for SNAs, you know, I mean, I think one of the first circles that I read was that you know, you could use WhatsApp or FaceTime, which is
I mean, it's there's no way that would be allowed. And when this came out initially, like, I know there's a lot of SNAs for saying, oh, you know, we're not getting any, the principal hasn't said anything, or the teacher I'm working with hasn't said anything, and they're just as lost as we are. When my principal rang me, his first question was, well, what do you think about this, and what have you heard? Because I mean, he got the same circular that the rest of us got.
I think we're all in the same kind of situation. I mean, again, like from the webinar on Wednesday, what was most evident is when I looked through the survey results before the webinar and that night after, like 1,900 people filled it in, and it was amazing to see how many people had not got any communication via the school, because I think the school are kind of in the same position. They don't really know.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're hoping that there'll be some clarity on it next week, undoubtedly. But I think what I would say is that whoever's listening to this, you're not alone in being confused, and you know, and I think there's a bit of clarity in us all not having clarity, if that even makes sense. But you know, like, that means that we're all freaking in it together. So all I can say from our end is that, you know, at your ability, what we're really trying to do is just put a bit of structure around how remote support can be done, and with the least possible implications for you as an SNA or teacher, whatever it might be. And obviously, ensuring that you can connect as best as possible. And like one thing again that you touched on the webinar was that there's a big difference between remote versus in person, and a lot of the work you do with your student is
it is definitely, yeah. But I think like one thing, I suppose, if you're comfortable with technology, and if you're comfortable enough to play around, and get some kind of direction. I know there was a lot of, I've seen an awful lot of questions in the last few days about people, they're looking to upskill and they're genuinely trying to figure out what it is we can do. So if you have the skills, I know I have parents constantly asking, how do I actually how do I connect with? If you look at a lot of dyslexia forums, there's a lot of parents who wouldn't have been using technology and now they're trying to figure it out. So the more we know in terms of technology, the more we can get out there. So at least I know that there are some kids that I can reach out, that we're not going to be able to do it for all of the kids. And that is the reality of it. There's certain kids I know that I work with, and I know I'm not going to be able to support them the way I have. There's other kids who I know, because if I can get the key, whether it's the Lego challenge or it's the maths, computer game or something like that, if I can get that key, then I might be the path for them to engage with their class teachers. And a lot of the kids, especially, and I think particularly in second level, anxiety can be a huge thing for an awful lot of the kids, and it can be quite overwhelming to know that you suddenly have all these teachers and you're tied down to different times. Schools are doing it in different ways. I know some schools are submitting work and they're saying, get to it when you can.
Yeah.
Other teachers are, I'm sure from, I suppose it depends on the person as well. For some people, it's good to work to a deadline and to keep to your structure and keep to your routine. Not everyone has that ability. But
yeah, and as well as that, you have parents at home. Like, we have one little boy, like, and Oisin's, I want to say years, but we're still in that sort of months phase, right? So we're going to say 20 months, even though I get a bit of abuse for it sometimes. So he's 20 months, but Christ, you couldn't take your eyes off him. Like I had him there a few days ago. I honestly, I feel like I took my eyes off for 10 seconds and he was on the freaking kitchen table. Hey dada, like, oh, look how great I am. But I'm like dying. Oh my God, my wife's upstairs working. If he falls off the kitchen table, I'm killed. But that's
and you can't go to the AD this time.
Yeah, exactly. That's the reality for a lot of parents. It's either one or two or three kids. They're trying to work from home. They're balancing that with their own anxieties.
Or they're sharing devices. Yeah,
100%.
There's I don't know how many parents have been on to me. There was one parent was on to me about they couldn't communicate with the teacher on Google Classroom. So I was talking her through how to do it. And then she sent me a screenshot and I realized she was working on her phone. So she's trying to, using devices and that's the reality. And she was using her phone outside in a place that she had Wi-Fi because they don't have broadband at home. This is the reality.
Absolutely. There's people sitting, like, I mean, again, people during the week they were onto us, like they were out sitting in their cars because that was the only place they could get strong enough Wi-Fi, and that was the only place that there wasn't crying in the background or whatever it might have been.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
That's the reality, I think. Like to kind of bring it full circle, I think you've like given such good insights there. There's two things I want to pick up on. Obviously, you're quite au fait in terms of technology and how to use it and all that sort of stuff. But tell us, like, when this kind of all kicked off, how is it that you were supporting the students that you had, like, once you started going remote? Before we heard about Circulus, I'm sure you were probably doing it anyway. So was there something that you were doing, or how were you doing it?
Well, I run our school's social media. So that is, we have a school Facebook page and a school Twitter page. I've been doing that for years. Myself and the principal set it up, but that is in line with our school policy. Our board of management passed it, and when we had our most recent DESH evaluation, the inspectors also all passed that. So it's not something that can kind of be done overnight. I am the only one, myself and the principal are the only ones with access to it, but while he has access to it, generally he kind of leaves it up to me. I run things by him if something doesn't, if I can't answer the question. I have built up a kind of a tone for the school. So when on the Thursday when it was announced, suddenly I was down in the school hall. We do sensory stations with the kids. So in the middle of the circuits and fine motor groups and gross motor groups and proprioception groups, we're all trying to go, apparently we're closing. So we were trying to kind of go around ourselves, trying to figure out, does that mean today? Does that mean next week? What's happening? And then, so went back to the school. It was my break time. So at least we were able to catch up on RT News and that. And then suddenly all of the teachers in the school are scrambling, trying to pull together work for 2 weeks, because we were going to be off for 2 weeks.
Literally within a few hours. Yeah.
So I came back after, we went out on lunch. The kids it was really interesting, because some kids were delighted we're having 2 weeks off, and there was a few kids came up who were kind of realized that, hang on now, why are we off? And is this really serious? And are we all going to get sick? And there was a lot of anxiety. So the way I was kind of looking at it was, you remember when we were off for the snow and the school had to close to keep everyone safe, and we all, stayed at home, we stayed safe, and then we were able to come back. That was the way I was going. So you remember being off, and this is just, we're off another time, that it wasn't as unprecedented as, I suppose it now has become. So then for the next couple of hours, as the teachers were working with the kids, and then the teachers are trying to pull together bits of work for 2 weeks. Every teacher in the school sent me, either emailed me or gave me a physical copy of what they had sent home for their class. Gotcha. So there was, if it's page whatever on whatever book, or one teacher had sent home, they wanted, by the time the kids came back, they wanted the children to be able to learn how to work the washing machine, and basically to do household chores. They said if they spend these 2 weeks helping out at home, they're going to learn an awful lot more. So different things. So the following day I posted up all of from junior infants to 6th class, all the work that was done, or that was assigned
to the groups.
And then, of course,
was that a Facebook group?
That was on the school Facebook page. So it's
gotcha.
It's a public Facebook page that people can like and share. And so they had, there was quite high engagement with that. And then over the next few weeks, I'd get messages from other teachers, from a few parents, and just going, oh, well, this has worked for me. Our teachers would send me stuff that they had found. Principal was emailing me stuff. The vice principal was emailing me stuff. Our vice principal is very big on, she's on mental health awareness. So she was sending me some really lovely stuff about, brain calm and different things that would help the kids. And then the principal, of course, had official Department of Education circulars that was sending on. Parents who had never contacted the Facebook page before were sending private messages with, I found this really helpful, it might help others.
So a nice
we were, of course, coming into, it was really lovely. We were coming into St. Patrick's weekend, so I had put up a few art challenges, and loads of kids got on to me with, there was some had printed off worksheets that their teacher had emailed, and they printed off. There was one kid sent this massive poster where he had put all his St. Patrick's work together. I was getting photographs of digital parades and that. So our
nice. Can you mind if I share those pages? They're public, right?
Yeah,
public? Yeah, that'd be a good idea, because I think maybe a few people here might be interested in some of the ways that you can kind of communicate. That's a nice.
Definitely, yeah. And there's the thing is, from the start, so many companies jumped on and they said, okay, usually our subscription is whatever. I know a lot of the teachers' resources, they started giving their work. One of the best things Will Sliney, the Cork comic book artist from Ballycotton.
Ballycotton man,
he had the We Will Draw challenge, and that's, I was getting pictures. So the kids were engaging in that sense. And I think it kind of gave them the step into Google Classroom then, because you have some parents and some kids who were dying for more work. And I met a parent today when in queuing in Dunstores, and she said that today was the first day her son went, yeah, I'm kind of bored now. And
probably because
that's pretty good after a month.
Depends on the weather, but like it's hard to believe when you say we were coming into St. Patrick's Day, and here we are, Easter's gone, and we're midway through April. Christ.
But the thing is, like, we're dealing with kids where they are, and I think it was important to kind of get across the message to parents as well, because parents were worried about, I'm actually, there was one parent got on to me to tell me that she was sick in hospital with COVID-19. She was worried about the child falling back. We're like, that's not what you need to worry about.
Yeah. Let's bring it back to kind of reality.
Yeah, and like the thing is, I think it's if we were in with the kids, we'd be meeting them. We'd know whose baby brother kept them up all night, and who's you meet the children where they are at the time, and we don't have that ability obviously now, but still. We have some parents who they're saying, I've got more worksheets, the child is able to work away with them, and that's helping them to focus. And then you have other parents who are like, yeah, he won't go anywhere near work stuff, and we're just building a cushion for it,
Yeah, like, look, anything that works. I mean, I think
if it works, it works.
And that's the thing for SNAs. Like I said at the midway through there, it's about taking kind of baby steps and just working with families, like you say, with students where they're at, and that's all you can deal with right now. That's reality. I mean, to kind of wrap it up, Tara, in terms of if there was any kind of one or two key takeaways for SNAs, what would they be, or if you had any kind of tips for people or things to put people's minds at ease?
I think, like, for what's worked for me, I've pretty much kept my school hours as much as possible. I've set up an office for myself at home. Now I have the ability to do that because there's, like, I had the room that I was able to separate out. The biggest thing really is we are all as confused as each other. And I think those of us who are in a bigger school where we have a team of SNAs definitely reach out to each other, because any of my colleagues that I've spoken to are all in the same boat. We're all kind of going, what has happened? But then there's also SNAs who are the only SNA in, a remote school somewhere, the only SNA in a big school. And then it can really feel like you're stuck on your own. But I think it's really important to if you're in contact with your teaching colleagues, with your principal, let them know that, if you are feeling overwhelmed or worried about something, just let people know about it, because we are, like, any principal I've spoken to has all said they're just as confused. Any teacher I've spoken to has said the same. Any SNA I've said has said the exact same.
And I think it's just about reaching out and kind of connecting. I know that there's a few good Facebook groups that you can kind of connect with. And just ask the questions, like, obviously if we can help in some way. But I think aside from that, you don't have to be on Facebook. Obviously there's other ways, like pick up the phone, like I say, to your colleagues, get in touch with whoever, just to feel as if it's not you on your own. But I know that I think that's one of the key kind of things. I mean, in terms of the tech stuff, it's just take a bit of time, be comfortable, test it, play with it, work with it, like I said.
Definitely. And the thing is, like, we say kids are techie and that they're on computers a lot, but a lot of them, they're not. They're on computers, but they can use tablets for games. So they're not as far ahead of us as sometimes it appears.
It's just that they're on them all they are on them all the time, and hence being that's why they're better, is because they're messing with them all the time, and so you probably need to take that child mentality.
I don't know how many times I've been called into the computer room in school because the internet doesn't work, and it's just that the Google Chrome icon is missing.
Yeah.
So I think
the internet is gone.
Yeah, no, there's no internet in that computer because the shortcut is missing. So I think it's okay to admit that you don't know what to do. And then the thing is as well, like sometimes for us, we're looking to communicate with kids in some way. So if you're not sure about something, tell the child, I'm not entirely sure how that one works. We'll figure it out together, just as you would have if you were in the classroom. Definitely there's an awful lot. We always kind of make the joke that there's an app for that. There is an app for absolutely everything. It can be hard to know where to start. And definitely, I know that on the Your Ability page, there is, if you sign up to it, there are 21 apps specifically for
app guides and stuff. Yeah, for sure. That's quite helpful. I mean, I think that your key point there being that it isn't about, it's about knowing that there's apps out there, but not knowing all of them and not knowing them.
No, definitely.
Depth.
Yeah.
It
can be really overwhelming.
Yeah. Start with simple things, I think is the key.
And, take your time with it and, try not to throw the computer out the window.
And be comfortable, I suppose, with the uncomfortable. This is something that we're not used to. For example, we're using Zoom to do this recording as it happens. And so I kind of forget to look at the webcam. I'm kind of looking around my screen a bit and I'm looking down here and and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta look at the webcam, because that's obviously where my eye needs to be and that's where you see me or whatever. So just small things and just bear in mind that we're all going to make mistakes, and the kids are going to make mistakes. If your teaching colleagues and your principal will make mistakes, but it's okay. I mean, and this isn't, I want to say forever, but hopefully not. But look, I think if it does anything, it will, for the kids that we support, it will make technology more front and center.
Definitely.
I think that's nothing but a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. It shows that, I suppose, those of us who have started jumping into technology, at least I know a lot of parents and a lot of my colleagues have gotten on to me in recent weeks going, oh, you mentioned some app before.
Yeah, so, we're getting a ridiculous amount of emails. I mean, this week alone, probably 400 or 500 emails. So yeah, most of my nights are spent trying to reply to emails, but that is reality. And I think for those of you who do want to kind of jump into it, well, this, just take the baby steps, small and often, and just kind of mess with it a small bit. Tara, I'm super conscious of your time and people's time that are watching us. So thank you so much for taking a bit of time out of your day to help out with the webinar this week, to give your insights and quite insightful kind of synopsis, I suppose, of what redeployment means for SNAs. And it's great to hear from a personal perspective. It's easy for me to review it and look at it and say, well, this is X, Y, and Z, but really what's the lived experience like? And I think your blog did a phenomenal job as well, by the way.
Thank you.
I'll be sure to share that here for those of the people watching that haven't seen it. So Tara, thank you so much for this. I'm looking forward to pushing this out, and who knows, we'll probably do another one soon if so requested. See you soon. Thanks, Tara.
Bye, James. Bye.